Welcome to Alpine Daily for Tuesday. We've been looking through the book of Hebrews, and we've come to chapter 8, where we learn that Jesus mediates a superior covenant. Now, the big idea in Hebrews is that Jesus is greater than, well, fill in the blank. The people were tempted to go back to Judaism, to reject the fullness of Christianity and go back to their Jewish roots. And so the writer of Hebrews is demonstrating that Jesus is greater than Moses. Jesus is greater than angels. Jesus is greater than the law. He's greater than the Old Testament priests. And here in chapter 8, he comes to the point where he says that the covenant that Jesus mediates is greater than the Old Covenant. And that's a reason not to go back to the Old Covenant, because it's inferior, it's passing away compared to what Jesus has instituted. Now, when we talk about the Old Covenant, you have to understand that central to Israel's relationship with God was this covenant that was ratified between Israel and God on Mount Sinai. They stood before God. God said, "You'll be my people, I'll be your God." And that covenant was sealed with the sacrifice of a bull's blood, an animal sacrifice, and the blood was sprinkled over the people to signify that they were like a signature on a document, that they would accept this covenant. And then that relationship was defined by the regulations of the law of Moses. This is how the people were going to live if they were going to be God's people. Well, that's the old covenant that these readers of the book of Hebrews were tempted to go back to instead of Christ. And so the writer wants to make sure they understand that Jesus mediates a better covenant. In verse 6, he says, "But in fact, the ministry Jesus has received is as superior to theirs as the covenant of which he is a mediator is superior to the old one, since the new covenant is established on better promises. For if there had been nothing wrong with that first covenant, no place would have been sought for another." He's saying that the first covenant lacked something. It wasn't complete. It couldn't get the job done. And he goes on in verse 13, he says, "By calling this covenant new, he's made the first one obsolete. What's obsolete and outdated will soon disappear." So he's arguing it doesn't make any sense to go back to that old thing, to go back to that old arrangement, because it's obsolete. It's been replaced by something better, mediated by Christ. And in the book of Hebrews, he explains what this means. Central to our relationship with God is also a covenant that he calls there the new covenant. And it's ratified between us and God, not on Mount Sinai, but on the hill of Calvary, where Jesus died on the cross. The sacrifice that sealed this covenant was not a bull, but Jesus' own blood himself, the perfect blood of the Son of God. And it's defined not by the rules and regulations of the Mosaic law, but by the law of love. Jesus says, love God above everything else, and love your neighbor as yourself. So that's the covenant that we're under as Christ followers. Why would we ever want to go back to some other religious system, to some other form of worship, when we've got this great relationship with God mediated for us through Jesus Christ? So you might want to pray about whether there's anything that you're ever tempted to go back to from your old life before Christ, to some previous religious expression, to some other way of relating to God. Why would you want to do that? Think about that. Are you tempted about that? And then give thanks that you can approach God in this new covenant relationship through Jesus, all through Jesus. He's the mediator. He's the priest. He's the sacrifice. It's all about him. Have a wonderful day today as you reflect on Jesus. May God bless you.